Oh, God. Okay, sweet. So we're live. Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Threat Models That Exercise Your SIEM and Incident Response. Get that going as well. Just so you know, some of the goals of this talk, we're going to be placing some threat models in into a security program, how to go about doing that, share some insights about how we went about that from both a MySec perspective and in the organization I work in. And we're going to be creating and executing some security exercises as we do so. Just so you know, this is a case study, so the usual disclaimers apply. Thoughts and blah, 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 blah. We also don't want to offend any pirates that might be on board. I am a handsome bastard. But on that note, my name's Nick Jacob. I'm a security engineer at a financial company. I'm a developer on the POSH-Tech project. And on occasion, I like to dress up and engage in piracy. The swashbuckling kind, obviously. Internet piracy is a crime. You wouldn't want to do that. So you can find me there on Twitter. Now, unfortunately, a lot of you, and I'm willing to bet most of you here, were here to see and hear this man speak. I'm not this man. I'd like to believe I'm the next level up. But he couldn't be here. He's just overworked lately. So to kind of engage his persona, I've been eating a lot of potatoes, and I thought I might act a little old. So, Wolfgang Goerlich, VP of Consulting, assignment, blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares about this guy. All right. So, next up, we're going to be going over why do you want to do this? Why engage in threat models? Why do you want to do it? What exactly, when you're doing this, do you want a threat model? And how do you go about doing so? And let's start with the why, because the why is really what's most important. Why would you want to be going about this? Well, as we all know, information security is about managing risk. And in this case, we all know the formula: risk equals assets times vulnerability times threat. And the threat is what's generally looked at. We're looking at asset management, vulnerability management, threat management is what's generally overlooked. And so what we're going over is, rather than just identifying and assessing, we're going to actually be modeling and how to engage that threat in some way. So, once again, there's that. And risk, which is what we're going to be calculating with this, is impact times likelihood. If a tree falls in a forest and nobody hears, it doesn't really matter. And likewise, if that's a major impact, it only happens once, you have to model based on that. So, why model? You're prepared to prepare for the threats and to minimize the impacts. You bring the impact to zero, the rest of the equation, it doesn't matter to your organization whatsoever. And likewise, if that threat or that impact is a great impact, then you're going to get some corporate buy-in once you're able to convince higher-ups that that needs to happen. So, you identify some low-cost IT controls, which brings us to the what. What do you model? In this case, we're looking at something which we refer to as TTP. Now, that's not actually a protocol, unfortunately, as much as we like our acronyms. We're actually talking about tools, tactics, and procedures. And if you look at a lot of security controls, they tend to focus on the tools of an attacker. One of the examples being, I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with this story, right? Everybody's seen this once or twice now. Snowden used wget to get into an organization. And as a result, the very next day, you could find, oh, we've got the tool to detect wget. Aren't you impressive? Well done, you made a signature-based tool. Good job on you. That hasn't been done before. So one of the jokes being made was, you just switch the tool you're working with. We've literally dealt with organizations where they were infected with some malware. So one of the people that was an AV vendor created a signature-based IDS that could detect a signature-based malware detector, just like everybody else, that detected that specific malware that they got. Well, the guy in charge of it wasn't an idiot. He took theirs, he added a space to the signature, and lo and behold, they couldn't find it. Good job again. So obviously, looking at the tool is an inefficient and incorrect manner of creating a threat model, because the tool can be easily changed. So rather than focus on the tools, we'd rather switch over to looking at the tactics. How did they get in instead of what did they use? So some of the sources we used to create this, and this isn't a really works-cited thing, we did meetups, threat modeling workshops as a member of a financial organization. I'm a member of FS Isaac, and of course some talks. Obviously, all of these have been, despite being washed out, as Daryl just encountered, they have been sanitized for disclosure. So, threat modeling workshops. Jeez. All right. Promise I'll try to stop ringing. We did a lot of workshops involving MISAC, involving other organizations in the Michigan area that allowed us to create some of these threat models, teach people how to do them, and get whatever unique input they could have. And is there a spot I'm supposed to stand? Should I just stand back here? I like the pace, man. All right. So to figure out what kind of input they could give us so that we could refine the process a little more. The other one are the ISACs. If you've ever encountered any of them, I don't know how many people are members of an ISAC. They're organizations based off the critical infrastructures for the nation. Different organizations are members. You collaborate to figure out how individual places were attacked, or if they were breached, what did they see that happened. And you can use those as information sources. And these are actually the lists of the different critical infrastructures. And some of the talks, I know a lot of you guys have seen Dave Kennedy, right? His one talk, Owning One to Rule Them All, is fantastic if you've got an environment that has SCCM in it. So that is a perfect example, and in fact what we're going to be using to create a threat model later in this talk. We used some of those as input to replicate an attack, see how it would impact our organization, and work from there. And lastly, we have groups MISAC where, yeah, we actually photograph them, much to their annoyance, and they didn't actually know this when I showed them this picture. But we share information on what we've seen in our organization, how we dealt with it, or what we learned from that attack. So we go through the how. And there are many ways of doing this. One of the ways is an attack tree. You lay out the different paths that the attack could have gone through, all the different things that occurred. And it gets very convoluted and very disorganized, very difficult to actually communicate to executive management. Another one's the kill chain, as popularized by Lockheed Martin. Not really. But that's basically you take the attack tree, you flip it on its side, and you go through it in a linear fashion. But the one we like to use is the attack path. One, because that's a fantastic picture and I want to go there one day. Two, because it's much easier to communicate and allows us to get our message across while actually identifying the keynotes of the attack. So when you're creating this abuse case, you're looking for these key things: business relevance, the attacker's objective, the attack path, the actual attack that occurred, and then there you're looking for the tactics, controls, and the metrics that you can use to measure your team's responses to these. And in addition, the communication plan on how to communicate, hey, we need to implement this $100,000 SIEM product, or how we need to have some training for Security Onion, or anything of these natures that would require higher up investment. So when you're laying out this attack path, we actually broke it up into 8 steps, starting with external reconnaissance and ending with the objective of the attacker being achieved. Each one of these is pretty much one of the things that we saw repeatedly in an attack. But one of the key things that you might notice when we're going through this is not all of them are there when we actually perform the threat model. It's a simple fact that not every attack uses these, but every attack has some element of these in them. So obviously these are done to be, we're all in a rush, we're all constantly working, we're all busy people, as evidenced by the fact that I'm doing this alone, not with my partner. But we're all racing the clock. So we want something that won't be complicated, because there's nothing like going to a sea level and saying, well, you see, we wouldn't have been breached if that big clear marble were just a little closer to that red marble, because that's a clear message that they'll really understand. When you start throwing tech jargon at them, they aren't going to get it. They're going to tune you out. They might even hate you a little bit, and then you're not going to get any corporate buy-in to do anything that would actually have prevented the attack from occurring again. So we use Excel. Everybody can relate to Excel. Worksheets are awesome, right? I mean, yeah, boring, but awesome. So, wow, really washed out. All right, so we're also doing this, creating some exercises that can be used repeatedly. And one of the things that we're doing is testing our team. We're trying to test our incident responsibilities to see how fast we can do it, how fast we can detect it, and how fast we can remediate it. And we're actually trying to make it so that rather than being an aimless exercise, We're actually trying to replicate a real attack when we're doing this without actually causing any damage to our actual production network. So, as I was discussing, one of the things that we're doing, we're creating a threat model here of the SIEM attack that Dave Kennedy used. And he starts with the initial breach. Instead of doing the external reconnaissance in this, you're just sending a PDF payload. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm willing to bet you've got at least one dumb person in your organization that'll click something they're not supposed to. Hooks into Windows services, installs rootkits. Actually, this was just for a malware threat model. Sorry, con model. But side scanning, and we're going through each one. Each one of these parts, there's a different step in the path, but not all the steps are there. Obviously, malware doesn't do any reconnaissance. People will just fire it off because it takes no effort. There's no real objective. The objective is to like flip the table on you and make you annoyed. So it doesn't have the specific objective that an actual attacker would use. So when we're doing this, we're going 1 to 4. But when we're actually building the controls for it, we go back up. Obviously, we want our strongest controls at the last step. You want your best defense around the actual objective, or as close to the objective as this particular attack goes. So we work our way back up. We audit local services. We use scripts to remove local accounts. We audit local accounts and alert on those changes. And what you'll notice is we also did detective or preventive controls and then did calculations based on that. So for each step of the path, we might have several or more controls. I think I'm blazing through this thing. So in this case, it's simple measures to prevent a malware infection in your network, simple measures to detect it occurring, and with those, you can create the exercise that you actually determine on whether or not you can prevent it. So you have the controls. Now let's test them. So how long will it take for your team to notice that a malformed PDF was sent into your network? Well, we're giving them 8 hours. Now this is just to start out. They should really push themselves to beat that time, because really, 8 hours to detect that somebody's been infected with malware? Come on. So then you make a service level change, see how long it takes them to find that out, execute unauthorized software, and again, you're working down, then up, then down again. So, working on the defense in-depth metrics, this is all theoretical, of course. Yes?
Going back to your metrics, are you saying that's what the current state is, or that's what you're starting with?
So if you look at something like the SANS critical security controls, they give you 24 hours to detect a change in the network. Does that mean like you should be satisfied if they detected it in 23 hours, 45 minutes? No, but it's a starting point for them to do. So in the case of this attack path, we actually did it as a starting point. You have 8 hours. Beat that time, and then the next time we run through this exercise, you're going to beat it again, kind of thing. So in the case of this, as I said, we did a calculation to determine we have this many detective controls, this many preventive controls. For every time that we've gotten infected with malware, theoretically, we should detect it every single time. They really have no excuse with all the controls we put in place. And then the preventive controls should have stopped it from occurring in the first place as well. Again, that's all theoretical. So what do you do afterwards? You create a real-world exercise that you can execute at any time. Specifically, and this is the fun part, without them knowing it. Because there's nothing like trolling your own team, really. It's a lot of fun to do when it's just ops guys that don't understand security. So we're going to go through an example, walk through one of these, and see what exactly occurs when we're doing this. Now, in this case, we're using that owning one to rule them all talk, in which case he hooked into SIEM and then sent a malformed update and pushed it out to every system on the network. It was very cool to watch, and Dave Kennedy has a great presentation style that's always a treat to see when he does a live demo. But you determine if an organization runs System Center, do some basic social recon to find the administrators, and then we actually build exercises as the next step to show how we would go about doing this. You send phishing emails to the administrators, upload a PDF to install a backdoor, remote reverse shell, excuse me, You enumerate on the SCCM server location, locate the source folder, upload the reverse shell, upload SCCM packets, and force the packages to refresh. And then you get this. This was awesome to watch. Again, I can't emphasize enough. That guy's a genius. I'm basically a hack. No. But when he set it up so that it sends it in, and then he hits the button, and it sends out every package. If anybody has worked with System Center Configuration Manager, that's what SCCM stands for, and I'm just throwing acronyms out in. I apologize. It's a centralized location to control patches and updates for a Windows server, for a Windows network. So if you own that specific part of the network, you can own everything on the network. And that's what he showed. With a push of a button, he started blasting, I think he had, 200 some connections in like 10 seconds. It was really cool. So that's what happens. All the systems now have a backdoor that he can access whenever he wants. And from there, we build that tabletop exercise that I was talking about. So, external reconnaissance. We determine if the organization runs System Center. Well, we don't really have a control that can prevent against this, but some basic OSINT will tell you whether or not they do, and you can't really stop people from updating their resume. And it's actually, I don't know, I'd be kind of threatened if my boss came to me and said, stop putting things on LinkedIn or something. Stop bragging about what you learned. No, that's not happening. So how would we prevent against these? We have spam detection at the gateway to detect the malformed PDF. We have exchange logs that we can look at to see when this occurred and who was infected so that we can see follow that attack down. And we have firewalls with egress filtering to prevent the reverse shell. Then we have folder level auditing for the scanning activity. We're going to be able to detect when the configuration manager's source folders were altered at all. And we include all of these levels of auditing so that we can tell what changes occur when. One of the big things he said was that it does require some hopefully dumb configurations in order to get through with this attack. But we also have the segregated accounts to prevent SCCM from being abused from a single user. So the single domain admin account wouldn't be able to do it, but you would have a separate account to manage the packets and then another one to push them out. So with that, you check the installation logs to detect when those malicious packets were pushed out, and you also have local machine logging so that you can detect when everything started opening a port open for this guy to get it back in. Then you monitor for shell traffic. So then we race the clock. We have lots of fun graphics. So the point here is to remember, measure the time for the security team to respond and remediate. And it's a key point here is make sure that they know that this is a tabletop exercise, that they're just being pushed to better themselves and the organization, and that their actual job isn't on the line. Because remember, to err is to human, and to R is to pirate. I like humor. I like dumb humor. So, like I said, you as the security team or as the pen tester or whatever you are, do these exercises and see how long it takes the team to notice you doing them. In this case, there's not much they can really do to detect this part, but we're going to include the exercise so you know what to do. If you use Google and other tools to perform that OSINT, you can easily see when somebody put on LinkedIn, oh, at X company, well, I know how to use a variety of ops tools, including SCCM. Well, it's a fair guess that if they're at this company and they're an SCCM administrator, that company is running SCCM. There you've got your vulnerability. There you know you can any attacker can find it. So then you send the phishing email. Well, send an actual one. I mean, you can send a malformed PDF file. It doesn't necessarily have to be infected, but I mean, you could have fun with this. Then you open up a non-standard TCP port. All of these you're checking to make sure that your team can detect it or have prevented it from occurring in the first place. And you get to give them a little wag of the finger or a tip of the hat for each one they get right. But remember, this is a test. This is only a test. Don't actually send an actually infected malicious PDF file. I mean, there are things like core impact, guys. You can have the dangerous fun without actually infecting your network. And nobody wants to go to the C level and say, yeah, that malware that's going through our network and tearing everything to shreds, that was me. because then you will be updating your LinkedIn profile, and you will have burned a lot of bridges on the way out. But also, don't leave the door open for the actual attackers to get in. When you're done playing with everything, remember to clean up your toys afterwards. Close the ports and make sure that your network is as secure as it was when you started playing. So, now that we've covered the safety tips of this, you upload an example package and you force it to refresh. It might be a simple thing to tell you that it worked, something that gets all the servers to ping back to your station or whatever you want. But it just tells you that this particular attack worked, and then you check the logs to see what would have been seen if this had happened. Use your network mapping tool to draw it out, open the folder, and you insert the data as is. You get to do this, and it'll be all kinds of fun because you'll be satisfied because you'll be able to access everything on the network. I mean, technically, most of you guys should, but some of us believe in separation of duties and don't give the security guy domain admin willingly. So insert the entries into the local logs, see what happens when that occurs, and see who's the one that comes to you and says, hey, I've detected that attack, and there's something fishy going on. And you're like, yeah, it was me, and I was fooling you. You open up some high-level TCP ports, and you reward them with pizza and punch and pie, and it'll be awesome, and everybody will be happy. Because remember, it is a test, it's a game, it's them racing the clock to beat their previous score. You're always looking to better your team and see how they could have improved in a specific situation. Wow, I'm blazing through this without the anecdotes and the old man speak. So, racing the clock, it's all about constantly improving your team's performance. So, walking through the process here, we have our external reconnaissance, we have our initial breach, internal reconnaissance, maintaining presence, and achieving objective. Again, not every step is present during every single attack path, so we don't need to include it. It's pointless to. One of the things that we noticed when we did our workshops was one of our workshops was based off that malware infection case, and a lot of people were like, well, if it was my organization, they'd have crafted malware to do this. And I'm just like, bro, not everybody is making like hand-carved silver bullets to take down your organization. A lot of malware is just, their job is to kind of come in there and kick your chair over, ruin your day, and make it a pain to clean up. It isn't handcrafted to kill you. And that's where a lot of people lost the sight of it. So they added a lot of steps and a lot of complications to the attack path than really needed to be there. So what you're doing is trying to incorporate your SIEM products or your security analysis tools into building these. So you've generated your attack path, as I showed you, and now you've got the detective capabilities in the SIEM and supporting monitoring equipment to actually continue working with it. So one of the things that we ended up doing was running a lot of these attack paths through QRadar and seeing what we could have done with this. Oh, well, we did one where it was the internal threat. We did a case where it was a terminated user trying to regain access to the network. Well, we found out it didn't actually report on this by default, so we added that to it. And lo and behold, we actually found people trying to log back in after they had been terminated. And one case actually was logging back in after they were terminated. And what ended up happening was, well, we changed the policy on how we go about on the steps that we use to terminate employees, simply because now we can detect on it, now we can see where that went wrong. So take these, see where they could be implemented into the applications you have, and then see where you could actually use these stories and these paths in order to get corporate buy-in to upgrade your security tools. Maybe this would be the push that you can make that, hey, Security Onion is great, but we need to upgrade. We need to go past whatever tool to purchase. I'm biased towards QRadar because I actually use it a lot, but it is expensive. So maybe you could use this case of, oh, when we ran through this exercise, well, we would have detected it. And in fact, a lot of the organizations that we collaborate with, they have detected it because of the type of SIEM product they use, which might be what you need in order to amplify your security posture. So the efficacies of these controls implemented in the ITGRC program, you're going to be trying to implement them as much as you can, and you're trying to improve how your team responds and in what efficient manner they can. It's about using the resources that are available to you as efficiently as possible. So one of the things that you're going to be trying to do is make it so that, yes, any corporate executive is going to be reluctant to spend money on the security program, but they're going to be more willing to when you can provide a clear analysis of why it's a good idea and why this actually is, despite what they think, the most efficient use of their time and money. Any tool is going to require that corporate buy-in and that time to train an employee on how to use it and maintain it. So it's not, security is definitely like an ongoing thing that requires constant learning and constant use. And then you also get to test the effectiveness of your incident response program. You get to see just how good your guys are. Maybe they think they're the words that you don't say on stage. But maybe this case, it puts them in their place, teaches them where they exactly need to learn in order to improve themselves and improve their response time, and then they actually get to sit on that high pedestal and look down on all the slow responding plebs that they once sniffed so derisively at. And you also get to affect that as well. So one of the ways that we go about this is we do the tabletops bi-weekly, or the tabletops bi-weekly and the actual threat models quarterly. And what we end up doing is sitting down, we might look through the news, we might go through any of those sources that I listed, and we'll say, okay, here's how they got in, or here's how we suspect they got in, and here's the steps that they've got. Build the attack model out, and then you can see where it stands in your organization. Then you actually run through the threat model quarterly. You actually get to put your team's feet to the fire and see just how fast they're able to respond to things and just how fast they're able to fix things before higher-ups notice or before the security guy comes down with the sword, yells at them. And then you get to do your red team exercises and go through the lessons learned of each one of these. So one of the big things that you've got to do is begin with realistic scenarios with meaningful stakes. Obviously, if you're going after an objective that doesn't matter to your company, it's not exactly the right attack for you. One of the examples that was given over at BSides Columbus, somebody that was newer to the InfoSec field was discussing why in healthcare you're worried about patient data. No, that's not true. Healthcare is actually worried entirely about saving people's lives, and the patient data is like a distant second. Remember to keep it in context of what the organization does and what its actual interests are. Because if an attacker is actually going after the golden goose of a company, they are going to go after what will make them money. Or they might be flipping your table, one or the other. So this is actually a lot harder than you think because we have such a skewed view on it. And then so that's why, because you need to get that attacker's objective. You need to agree on what the attacker's going for. As I said, not everybody's handcrafting malware to take down your particular organization, but you should be ready for malware because everybody gets it. Not every port scan is going to be successful, but you should be aware of what happens in case one actually turns out to give them some information you weren't aware of. Not every attack's going to work out the way you thought it was. Make sure that you know what the end goal is so you can put your best defenses around that. And make it an interesting story. I know I've been boring you guys, but make it so that it's fun for the team to do. Make sure that you've got something engaging. Make sure that they know, act like this is how many people have done fire drills in school? I mean, those are boring as all heck. Don't make those, make these like those. Make these effective and make them something that your team can invest in and actually get something out of. Make sure it's challenging. You got to make sure that they actually have something that pushes them. Otherwise, they get kind of lackadaisical, and they might even script it out so that it gives you the information that you want to see. But make sure that they can't do something like that. Be aware of who the players are in this. Who is it that's going to be at stake when this goes down? And make sure that they're aware of what's going on and how they should respond in this instant as well. And also schedule it for free time. I mean, we're all busy, but give it enough time. so that it can be an effective exercise, not something like, oh, we made it halfway through the exercise, but you guys did fine. We'll count it. It's good. You don't want to go about it this way. You want it to actually be an effective exercise that you're performing. And keep score. As I said, some people are always competitive, so push them to make it better through that. Make sure that they see, oh, we got it. Yeah, we beat that 8-hour time the first time, and we did it in 6 hours. Well, now we're going to do it in 4. And remember to celebrate when you do. Make sure that you put aside that money so that you can buy them a pizza or something. Whatever they want. Well, not whatever they want. Some people might abuse that. But make sure that it's something that they feel gratification for having defeated this challenge and come out better on the other side. So, in summary, what we did was we selected some scenarios, we created those abuse cases and analyzed the paths. We created some exercises and saw how you might go about that. And we used it to evaluate how strong our security posture was when we came out on the other side. And now I'm opening it up for any questions that might be out there. Yes?
Would you say like a normal threat exercise, how long the session takes?
Well, the way we've normally done it, the tabletops, we spent about, I'd say, 2 or 3 hours building one of those. And when you're going about it, as a security analyst versus the ops side, you might do it as a blind exercise. The ops side might not know what's going on, but you might be able to give them metrics like, hey, sometime this week, it's a slow week, we're going to run through this, and your security team might be on board, should be on board with this, but maybe you don't tell your ops team, maybe you do. Make it so that they've got enough time that it won't impact their normal day-to-day business. So I'd give it a few days, depending. If it's just detective controls, just things like that, work to beat those specific metrics. Obviously, it should be less than 24 hours. Everything happens pretty quickly, all things considered. So give them the maximum amount of time that it should take for all the controls to occur. And then make sure, like I said, if you can do this in a QA environment instead of production, then that might be a little better because you are opening ports and things like that. That really might be opening the door for a real attacker to take advantage of during that time. So I'd say less than a day is what you should apply for this. Anything else? Well, that's it for me. Yes?
All these tabletop exercises, are they already done free content for rules in the SIEM, and then you have your analysts responding to those, or do you do that without having that self-build?
So what we've done is we've taken.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
Just saying, like, do you get your red team involved after the fact to go with like your analyst to review the events and explain to them, you kind of have a post-mortem?
Yes, that's one of the big things is to take that as a lessons learned after the fact. Okay, again, if you didn't hear the question, do you take your red team after the fact of doing this with the security and analyst team and go over and do a post-mortem on how this on how this scenario went? Yes, what you're doing is, one, they're not normally baked into things like QRadar, but what you end up doing is figuring out how to use your SIEM or how to use your detective, your IDS in a way that you weren't initially, so that you can detect this attack going on. The other way is sometimes your team doesn't beat its old score, and you can figure out what the reason was for that. Maybe you guys added a new application that made you tune out reporting on it, so that as a result you never saw the attack happening. Things like that helps you just build your security posture up further. Any other questions? Well, with that, hope you guys have a good rest of the day at BSides Cleveland. It's Cleveland here.